The magazine had to have an element of the film in it that would be noticeable and unique to that particular issue. I decided that it would look good if the banner at the bottom of the cover was a torn piece of paper showing other films that would feature in the mag. Finding images of torn pieces of paper on Google, I placed it on top of my background image and had to insert the smaller pictures from other films on top of it to make the banner look conventional. I had to resize the images to ensure they fit perfectly. I then used the rubber tool again to erase the edges of the film pictures to the same edge as the ripped paper. I then used the rubber tool to erase the edges of the paper to make them look rugged and edgy. This made the rip look more realistic. It took a long time to get this right because the placement had to be perfect and not have any gaps. Without Photoshop, I wouldn't have been able to bring the idea to life, as it would have been impossible to execute on Microsoft Publisher, for example.
When we had completed the first version of our teaser trailer, we uploaded it to YouTube and added a request for feedback at the end. Responses came back saying that our title shot wasn't interesting enough considering the film, narrative and emotional background music. We decided that to improve this, we would animate the title to bring it up to a more professional standard. Without technology, this improvement would have been impossible to execute, and using After Effects would never have been an option. This allowed us to expand on our creativity and learn new skills regarding animation. With the paper top layer selected, I used the pen tool to draw a line going across the top of the image and another one below it. This is to separate the image and create the piece of paper that would be ripped away to reveal the title of the film. I wanted to make it look as realistic as possible, so I had to avoid making these lines straight, as when paper is torn it never comes out straight. I then had to duplicate this layer to ensure that there was something behind it for me to edit the text onto later, renaming it paper bottom and moving it below paper top. I then hit M on my keyboard to reveal the mask setting and change the add mode to subtract before closing the drop down. I then had to make the top paper invisible so that I could work on the middle piece. As you can see, the image just looks like a blank piece of paper, so selecting the bottom paper layer, I right clicked and selected layer styles and drop shadow. I then clicked the little toggle mask and shape visibility icon to remove the path on the image to make the edge clearer and close the down bar on the paper bottom layer. This made it look a lot more 3D and like there were actually two layers against each other. However, the edges still looked too sharp as if it had been cut with the scissor tool. To fix this, I went to the Effects and Presets panel on the right side and searched for the Roughen Edges effect, dragging it to the paper bottom layer. I then boosted the complexity of the effect to the maximum of 10 and increased the border to 15 to make the edge look more rough. I then needed to copy this layer, hitting Command C on my keyboard. Selecting the paper top layer and making it visible again and hit Command V to paste it. With the paper bottom layer selected, I changed the edge type to roughen colour, then the edge colour to a light grey tone. At this point, the edge is quite clear, however it isn't consistent enough to look realistic. Also, the edges shouldn't be clear before the paper has even ripped. So I selected the paper bottom layer and made the path visible again and selected one of the points. I then clicked Shift on my keyboard and highlighted all of the points on the bottom line. Then clicking Shift again, I used my arrow keys to move the line up or down to ensure that the two pieces blend together and don't show any gaps, repeating this with the top lines and removing the path. In order to create the page turn effect, I searched CC Page Turn in the Effects and Presets panel and dragged it to the top layer. As shown, the page is turning on the entire image, which isn't what I want the animation to look like. So changing the back page from paper top to none and change the paper colour to something that will make it clearer to see while editing. The rip is then able to come away from the middle of the image instead of the entire thing. In order to create a shadow effect on the piece of paper that is being torn away, I played around with the light direction now to find the right shade decided on -121 degrees. I then had to make it tear at a circular angle for it to look more realistic, so I increased the fold radius from 50 to 100. For the shadow beneath the tear, I selected the top layer, duplicated it and renamed the new layer to Paper Shadow and moved it below the paper bottom layer. I then clicked Isolated next to the layer and changed render setting under the CC page turn effect to front page. Searching for the hue and saturation in the effects and presets panel, I applied this to the paper shadow layer and took the master lightness down to -100 before taking the layer off Isolate. Selecting the layer, I shift clicked and used the arrow keys to move the tear left and right, trying to find the right size for a realistic shadow. I then looked for the Gaussian blur effect and applied it to the layer to increase the blur to 10. This made the previously harsh black look more like a shadow. The last thing I needed to do was make the shadow look slightly less dark, so selecting the paper shadow layer and clicking T on my keyboard, I lowered the opacity from 100% to 75%. During the planning process for Torn, our group wanted to find some interesting shot angles that have been used in other films to incorporate into our own. We used YouTube to find other trailers that used angles and shots that we were interested in doing ourselves and took screenshots to remember these when we came around to filming our trailer. This was a vital part of the planning process because without doing this, we might have only used simple eye-to-eye shots which would have limited the marks we could have achieved. We also used YouTube to watch other teaser trailers as a part of the research process. This was important to do because it gave us loads of ideas on what to include in our own trailer for it to look professional. Some that we took influence from include Return to Sender and The Boy Next Door, from the scenes where a letter was being written and a woman was running towards the camera. For the evaluation, we used a green screen. This allowed us to edit the magazine cover and film poster that we made into the background while the ancillary texts were being discussed. This made our evaluation more creative and made what was being said clearer and more interactive for the audience. We used Premiere to edit our footage together to create the teaser trailer for Torn. We used the chopping tool frequently to remove any pieces of footage that we didn't need, and also to put all of the shots in an order that resembled a professional trailer as much as possible. Having used the program before, it wasn't too hard to get right to work without delaying the process with mistakes. So editing the trailer was really a matter of creativity rather than struggling with the technology.